Let's face it, keeping up with AI, it feels like trying to understand a constantly evolving alien language, right?
No, absolutely. It's overwhelming.
You want to get the core ideas, without drowning in jargon. So, for this deep dive, we've taken a close look at some thinking coming out of Red Hat.
Hmm.
Our goal is really to cut through the noise and figure out what their perspective on the future of AI, well, what it really means. Not just for big companies, but maybe for how we all interact with this tech.
Yeah. And what's fascinating here is this real fork in the road we're seeing in AI. It's pretty clear now.
A fork in the road. How so?
Well, on one side, you have these incredibly powerful but often, quite secretive AI models, the big ones everyone talks about.
Right, the household names.
Exactly. And then on the other side, there's this growing push towards something more open, more transparent, and ultimately maybe more hands-on.
They're practical, maybe.
Yeah, practical. And understanding this dynamic, this tension, is really crucial, I think, to seeing where things are likely headed.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no denying the excitement around AI. It's everywhere. But there's also this underlying sense of, well, what exactly are these things doing under the hood?
That's the question, isn't it?
We see the limitations of these big closed systems. For example, their knowledge can be, well, stale sometimes. They weren't always up to date.
Right. Their training data gets old.
But then you have these interesting developments trying to shake things up a bit, like Llama, DeepSeek, even Baidu's Ernie X1 starting to offer alternatives.
And a really significant force driving this shift
Yeah.
is the increasing focus on what people are calling responsible AI.
Responsible AI. Okay, that sounds important, but what does it actually mean in practice?
Well, it's not just about being ethical in some, abstract way.
Yeah.
It has very practical implications. We're talking about things like the sheer amount of energy needed to train and run these massive models.
The environmental impact.
Exactly. And also how the technology is actually being used in the real world, the data it learns from its training data, or the technical term is its corpora, and these vital considerations like where that data is stored and who actually controls it. Data sovereignty.
That's a big one for businesses.
Huge. Plus, making sure AI works well in different languages, not just English, and even the broader political context surrounding it all.
Right. It's about the whole picture, isn't it? And I guess that's where Red Hat comes in. Their background is open source.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Their entire history is built on that idea open source, showing that collaboration and transparency can lead to really powerful, really successful technologies. Linux, for example.
Yeah, the classic example.
So now they're looking to bring those same principles, openness, collaboration, to the world of AI. They're aiming for that responsible and transparent development we were just talking about.
Okay, so let's unpack one of the big issues people have with current AI. This feeling that it's often like a black box.
Exactly that. It's a great way to put it. Because many of these leading AI models are just so incredibly complex, and they're often developed in these very closed environments. How they actually arrive at their answers is, well, it's largely a mystery to the outside world.
You don't see the working out.
Not really. As Julio Guijarro, he's the CTO for EMEA at Red Hat, as he put it, there are significant unknowns. And for many users, AI really does remain a black box.
And this lack of transparency, it must have real consequences.
Oh, definitely. Some really significant ones.
Like what? What are the real-world impacts of this black box problem?
Well, think about it. If you don't understand the reasoning behind an AI's decision, how can you possibly be sure it's fair or even accurate?
Good point.
Then you run straight into issues like bias. Julio pointed out that many European and Middle Eastern languages are seriously underserved because these huge models are often trained primarily on English text.
Right, so they just don't work as well if you're not using English.
Pretty much. Or worse, they might introduce biases. Consider like a hiring AI trained mainly on English resumes. There's research showing these models can inadvertently penalize candidates with, say, non-standard naming conventions common in many European and Middle Eastern cultures. That directly hinders diversity efforts.
Wow. Okay, that's a concrete example.
And then there's data sovereignty, which we touched on. That's another huge one. Businesses are, quite rightly, very concerned about putting their sensitive information onto these public AI platforms where the data policies can be murky or change.
Yeah, your company's data is often its most valuable asset, right? You need control.
Absolutely. You need to know where it is, who sees it, and be aware of the potential risks.
Yeah.
Using a black box system makes that very difficult.
That makes total sense. So, okay, if these massive sort of mysterious AI models have these significant downsides, the bias, the data concerns, the lack of transparency, what's Red Hat actually proposing as a different path forward?
So Red Hat is really championing the idea, the widespread adoption, of what they call small language models, or SLMs.
SLMs.
Okay. Their thinking is that these more focused, more efficient alternatives to the giant large language models, the LLMs, can offer really substantial advantages. And importantly, they directly address many of those transparency and control issues we've been discussing.
All right, SLMs. What makes them fundamentally different from these big LLMs we keep hearing about? How small is small?
Well, it's relative, of course, but there are several key distinctions. First off, SLMs are designed to run in more flexible environments. They can run locally, like on your own company servers, or even on standard hardware sometimes, or in hybrid cloud setups.
So not necessarily needing massive data centers.
Exactly. They can often operate on standard computing equipment, which reduces the need for those super expensive and power-hungry GPUs that you typically associate with the really large AI models. That's a big cost and accessibility factor.
Okay, that's one difference. What else?
Second, and this is crucial, because they can be connected to local, specific business data. They can be much more relevant and up-to-date for particular tasks.
Ah, right, because they can see your data.
Precisely. Julio Iharo made a great point about this. He said LLMs can become obsolete quickly because the most current, the most critical data is often generated right there within a business, close to the action.
That's a really clear distinction, yeah. So instead of this huge general AI brain sitting somewhere off in the cloud, you have something smaller, more targeted, and actually closer to your real immediate needs and data.
That's the idea. More focused, more current.
What about the cost factor? That's always a big consideration for any business.
Cost is potentially a major advantage with SLMs. Julio highlighted the often overlooked expenses of constantly querying LLMs.
How so? Isn't it just like paying for cloud usage?
Well, yes and no. Traditionally with, say, database queries, you had a defined scope. You could pretty much predict the costs. But with the back-and-forth conversational nature of LLM interactions, a single question can easily lead to multiple follow-up queries, right?
Yeah, you refine your question, ask for more detail.
Exactly. And each one of those interactions costs money. Running an SLM on your own infrastructure, well, that offers much greater cost predictability. Your usage is limited by your own resources, not by some per-query charge from a massive cloud provider that can quickly add up.
Ah, I see. Predictable costs versus potentially spiraling costs.
Precisely. He even used the example of a customer service inquiry. What might have been a single simple transaction in the past could potentially balloon into dozens of microtransactions with an LLM, leading to totally unexpected costs.
Wow, okay, so that seemingly simple interaction could have these hidden financial implications you don't even realize at first.
That's the risk. And then, of course, there's the point we already made. Keeping your sensitive data on your own systems with an SLM offers significant benefits for security and privacy.
Absolutely. Keeping sensitive information in-house with an SLM makes total sense from a security standpoint. Now, Red Hat isn't just talking about these smaller models in isolation, are they? Their core belief in open source seems like a really key part of their strategy with SLMs, too.
Oh, it's absolutely central. It's fundamental to their approach. Red Hat is actively involved in optimizing these smaller models in the open. Meaning the development process itself is transparent. A whole community of developers can contribute, inspect the code, make suggestions, and help make them better, faster, more efficient.
Like with other open source projects.
Exactly like that. And a crucial part of this effort is their focus on supporting and improving something called VLLM.
VLLM, what's that?
Think of VLLM as the engine, the software that efficiently runs these AI models once they're trained. It makes it easier and faster to actually get the answers, the inferences from the model.
So it's about making them perform well.
Yes, and standardizing things. The goal is to create a streamlined and standardized way for people to use various AI models, big or small, actually across different environments, whether it's running on their laptop or at the edge of a network or in the cloud.
Okay, so it's about making these SLMs and AI in general more accessible and easier to integrate into different systems no matter where you are.
That's a big part of it, making it practical.
And you mentioned earlier that using local data allows for more specific and relevant results.
Precisely. That's another huge benefit of this SLM approach, especially when combined with open tools. Because SLMs can be trained and, importantly, fine-tuned using data that's specific to a particular industry or a region or a company's unique application, the outcomes can be much more targeted and effective.
Right, tailored AI.
Exactly. Julio gave the example of projects they're seeing in Arab and Portuguese-speaking parts of the world. The dominant English-centric LLMs simply don't perform as well there for language reasons or cultural context.
Because they weren't trained on enough relevant data.
Right. So by leveraging local relevant data with these more adaptable SLMs, you can actually develop AI solutions that are much better suited to those specific needs and languages.
That really underscores the potential for AI to be, well, more adaptable, more equitable maybe, and address a much wider range of unique challenges globally.
I think that's definitely part of the vision.
What about some of the other practical issues that have cropped up with using the larger AI models in real-world applications? Things that businesses bump up against?
Latency is a big one. Speed.
The delay in getting an answer?
Yeah. In situations where speed is really critical, think about real-time customer service responses or making split-second decisions in, say, industrial automation. The time it takes to send a query out to a distant, heavily used LLM and get an answer back can be a real bottleneck.
Too slow for the job.
It can be. Having a focused SLM running closer to where it's needed, maybe even right on the factory floor in the local data center, can dramatically reduce that delay. Milliseconds matter in some applications.
Makes sense. And then there's that fundamental trust issue we touched on earlier, that feeling of not really knowing what's going on inside the box.
Back to the black box problem.
Right. How do SLMs and this whole open source approach help build more trust?
Well, fundamentally, by promoting open platforms, open tools, and open models, Red Hat is striving for much greater transparency across the board.
Openness builds trust.
That's the principle. When the development process itself is open for everyone to see, when the underlying code is available for review and scrutiny, it naturally fosters understanding and builds confidence. As Julio put it, they're focused on building capabilities to democratize AI.
Democratizing AI, what does that mean in practice?
It means it's not just about Red Hat or any single company releasing a model and saying, here, use this. It's about empowering users, developers, businesses, even researchers with the tools they need to actually understand how the model works, to replicate its behavior if they need to customize it, to fine-tune it for their own specific purposes, and ultimately to deploy it themselves where they need it.
So giving control back to the user, essentially.
Exactly. That sense of user empowerment, of control, seems to be a really core element of Red Hat's vision for where AI should go.
And it sounds like they're backing up this vision with some concrete actions, not just talk.
Absolutely. They're making moves. For instance, their acquisition of a company called Neural Magic is a significant step.
Neural Magic, what do they do?
They focus on optimizing AI performance. Specifically, inference speed-making models run faster, particularly on standard CPUs, not just expensive GPUs. This improves AI scaling and makes it more accessible on a wider range of hardware.
Ah, so that ties into making SLMs practical on regular equipment.
Precisely. It directly supports their work with VLLM and the whole accessibility push. Furthermore, their collaboration with IBM Research on a project called Instruct Lab is really interesting.
Instruct Lab.
Yeah, this initiative aims to enable individuals who have valuable business knowledge, domain experts, but maybe don't have deep data science expertise, to actually contribute directly to building and improving AI models.
So bridging the gap between knowing the business problem and knowing how to build the AI solution.
Exactly. It's about bringing that crucial business expertise into the AI development loop more easily.
That sounds potentially very powerful.
It could be. Look, Red Hat's overarching belief, and this was emphasized by their CEO, Matt Hicks, is pretty simple. The future of AI is open.
Open, full stop.
That's the message. They envision a future where AI is much more use case specific, designed for particular tasks, built on open source principles right from the ground up, is economically sustainable for businesses to actually run, and is accessible to a much, much broader audience than just the tech giants.
So to kind of bring it all together then, this deep dive into Red Hat's perspective, it really shines a light on the potential, doesn't it? The potential of these open, smaller language models to maybe create a future for AI that feels more accountable. More practical, and ultimately more within our collective control. It seems to directly address that initial feeling many of us have of being overwhelmed by the current AI landscape. It offers a vision of something potentially more manageable, more transparent.
And this raises a really important question, I think, for you listening. Considering these clear advantages we've discussed, transparency, control, relevance that smaller, locally run AI models might offer, what specific applications, maybe in your own work or even your personal life, could be fundamentally transformed or significantly improved by having this kind of tailored AI technology right at your fingertips?
Yeah, it really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About the profound implications of extending those open source principles, which have already revolutionized so many other areas of technology, fully into the world of artificial intelligence? What could that truly mean for innovation, for accessibility, and maybe for the very nature of how AI develops in the years ahead? Definitely something to keep mulling over.